Our stuntman falls in front of another United supporter. Another positive result. The common bond overcomes any embarrassment or inconvenience. Back to the rival teams again. The Liverpool shirt goes back on. This Manchester United supporter hardly stops long enough to see if he's okay before disappearing into the building.
So what did you do?
I asked if he was okay. I didn't walk over, I asked if he was okay.
And one of the first things you noticed was he was wearing a Liverpool shirt?
Yeah. I think it was the red colour more than anything that draws me, and then I saw the letter and I thought, ooh. Should have left him.
Our stuntman fell in front of 12 Manchester United fans. He was helped to his feet every time he wore a United shirt. He was left to help himself every time he wore a Liverpool shirt. Dr. Mark Levine's ongoing research into the issue of bystander behaviour backs up the results of our small study.
On the one hand, the positive thing about this research is it demonstrates that when we feel ties to other people, then we're more likely to help them. The negative side of the research potentially suggests that when we see people as out-group members, as others, then we're less likely to go and help them than we might normally be. People have tremendous anxiety over their decisions to intervene and also not to intervene. Nobody easily turns away. Being a bystander doesn't mean doing nothing. If you don't intervene, that's an active decision not to get involved. And it's when people don't get involved, when they see any kind of injustice, that that injustice is allowed to continue.
This bystander behaviour is paralleled in society at large. We can extract one example from a complex situation with the distinctive rival groups of Arab and Jew. In Israel, the Palestinians often live in appalling conditions, not far from impressive housing developments built by Jewish settlers. As the gulf between the two groups widens with restricted human rights for Palestinians, there's ongoing violence. The Palestinians throw stones and sometimes open fire. The Israelis retaliate with live rounds and rockets and the force of law. Until September 1999, Israel effectively legalized torture under the term moderate physical pressure. This enabled the secret police, the Shin Bet, to brutalize suspected Palestinian terrorists using shackling, shaking and isolation. A liberal middle-class nation stood by and tolerated this behavior for years. Even before the introduction of moderate physical pressure in 1987, Palestinians like Bassem Erjamal were arrested and ill-treated for suspected involvement with the PLO.
I was a student at the Beirut Arab University in Lebanon, and at those days that when the PLO was mainly based in Lebanon, the Israelis used to assume that each or any Palestinian who was studying there, who was passing through there, or whatever, he must be good in touch in a way or another with the PLO. So anyone was suspect.
What were you studying?
I was studying English literature.
And how far were you into your course?
Well, in the first year.
In your first year?
I was 18 years old, I was 18 and a half, something.
And did you have any connection with the PLO?
Those days? Yes, I did.
The Israeli army's use of moderate physical pressure has led to the jailing and torture of some 10,000 Palestinians over the last decade. They have their day in court, but with only the veneer of a fair trial.
There is a lawyer, there is a defense, there is a judge, and somebody translating to you what's going on because you don't know Hebrew. And sometimes they allow to a certain extent, in certain cases, in very, very certain cases, to the priest to be there or to the Red Cross to be there. But there is no justice.
What sentence were you given?
I was given 2 lives, and life, according to Israeli laws of those days, and still I think today, it's 99 years for each life, and 10 years. The 2 lives and 10 years, if you add them, 208.
The Palestinians believe they have suffered grave injustice at the hands of the Israelis, who have long suffered anti-Semitism.
It's one of the great ironies in Israel that the Israelis were people who originally came together out of a sense of common shared nationhood and identity because of the Holocaust they've been subjected to, not just in Nazi Germany but in Europe generally, and that they should have come together but have done so at the expense, as it's perceived, of another people. And I think that illustrates the way in which human rights abuses may perpetuate themselves, and one abuse may create another abuse.
The recent escalation of violence in Israel, in which even teenage boys are becoming martyrs, has many causes. But it becomes easier to understand in part when it happens in a country that was prepared to legalize torture effectively, while most of the population stood by.
At this stage, you're probably thinking that you'd never be capable of inflicting human rights abuses on another human being. But you'd be wrong. The ability of ordinary people to do evil acts is a part of our psychology.
This ability to do wrong was seen in a powerful experiment in 1971. "24 ordinary 19-year-old student volunteers were arrested and imprisoned in the basement of Stanford University by Professor Philip Zimbardo.
This is our Stanford prison. We replace office doors with these prison cell bars in each of 3 office rooms. Over here is solitary confinement, the hole, a tiny little closet where boys were put in, sometimes naked, sometimes in shorts, and either sat or stood up, sometimes for hours on end, for infringements of the rules. Over here is where they ate, on a small table, so they could be under the surveillance of the guards, and other inmates could be watching while students in the privileged cell ate, and when they didn't.
Simply by the roles they were asked to play, either prisoner or guard, Professor Zimbardo discovered that he could create his very own tyranny, and it took just 5 days.
On day 1, these groups had everything in common. They were identical. It was just by a flip of the coin that they were guards or prisoners. Within a matter of a few days, there was nothing similar about them. And what you saw was the emergence of 2 classes of people, the all-powerful and the totally powerless.
Prisoner 819 did a bad thing. Prisoner 819 did a bad thing.
The brutality of the superior over the inferior group soon took hold. Remember, this was meant to be role play. What we're seeing is the final step on the road to tyranny.
You can give me the blankets and sleep on the bare mattress, or you can keep your blankets and 416 will stay in another day. Now what will it be?
What we saw was a gradual escalation of aggression, of hostility of the guards against the prisoner, which built each day over the successive days. Not only was it physical aggression, hitting the prisoners, there was verbal aggression, abusing them. They began to use the prisoners as their plaything, as their toys, having them engage in activities which were of a sexual nature.
You be the bride of Frankenstein, and you be Frankenstein. I want you to walk over here like Frankenstein and say that you love 2093.
Hello, Frankenstein, walk.
Walk like Frankenstein.
We ask you to walk like you.
I love you, 2093. Get up close. Get up close.
I love you, 2093. I love you, 2093.
You smile, 2093. You get down here and do 10 push-ups. 2, 3, 4.
Even I, an experienced experimenter, a liberal person, got caught up in this crucible of human nature, not as a prison psychologist, not as an experimenter, but as a prison superintendent. And so these bizarre things began to seem normal.
Smoking is a privilege. Smoking is a privilege. What is smoking?
A privilege. What? A privilege.
The guards became increasingly sadistic.